All right.
Look,
What's good, bro? Been a minute.
in a minute, things are a little different, right?
Right. New year, 2021. First vid of the new year.
How's the new year been for you?
2021. Oh shit, my
First vid
bad.
of
Let
the
me
new
turn
year.
this down real quick. Well, yeah, so far this year's pretty smooth. How about you, bro?
A lot of good things coming this year.
Always. Like Kwame and Nkrumah say, forward ever, backwards never.
So, right here for people that are just coming in, we are tuning into a debate between Kwame Ture and Molefi Asante, and I'm sure many people don't know who they are. So that's going to give you just a quick idea of who Kwame Ture is.
Yeah, all right. So Kwame Ture, is from Trinidad, fellow proponent for Black Power. He was the creator of the term Black Power in the 60s. He was in SNCC. He worked alongside like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. And as time went on, he also worked with the Black Panthers for a short stint. And then he took a trip out to Ghana in Africa and teamed up with Kwame Nkrumah and then helped establish the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And this is where we are now. Like, I don't know if we said it before, but we also members of All African People's Revolutionary Party. Shout out to the squad. Um, did you want to talk about Molefi Asante?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know too much about him. So if you know about him, yeah, go ahead, give him a little rundown.
Okay, cool. So I know he was teaching at Temple. I don't know if he's still there or not, but um, just like how Kwame Ture coined the term Black Power during the 60s, Molefi Asante is the founder of the theory of Afrocentricity. He's also written over 77 books. And like this debate here is actually I would say a good teaching moment for anybody that doesn't necessarily one understand what Pan-Africanism is, and two for anybody that doesn't even know what Afrocentrism is. Whereas one is more like a political movement and the other is a cultural type of movement. So one, I don't know if y'all know, but I love Kwame Ture. So I'm excited about this, to be honest with y'all.
Also, I think that Pan-Africanism and Afrocentrism don't really have to go against each other. So I think that
Nah.
that just makes this a little more interesting. I'm interested to hear about like what kind of debate they have back and forth actually because of that.
Yeah, I think when people check this out, you'll kind of see how these are two strong leaders that actually just respected one another. Like it wasn't like there was any beef or anything. You know how sometimes in our community or whatnot, things can look a little divisive and we kind of get away from our overall objectives and whatnot. But this is a pure prime example of two leaders in our community that actually come together and actually have a civil discussion on the differences and just debate about them, like what exactly the proponents of them, and kind of critiquing each other's ideology and whatnot. So, like again, I'm excited. So,
And it's with that objective. I feel like it's with the objective to build.
right, yeah.
So, I'm Jalen. This is Zach. If you've never seen Unlock perform what we do here, we're a book club, but we also, we also kind of want to bring other types of information to you. Books. So going live and kind of reacting to these type of videos is one way. So if y'all like this, just give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and we'll run it again. I think it'll be cool. So we'll stop from time to time to kind of talk about the things. If y'all comment in here, or even if y'all would like to jump in the live chat, you can send.
Yeah,
We'll send you a link. But we want to engage with y'all as much as we engaging with this video.
yeah. For those that are coming in again, like if you don't know who these people are, hopefully afterwards they'll inspire some thoughts, some action between for anybody that's watching. But yeah, I mean, I'm ready to start if you are.
Yeah, and also like I don't know everything. Zach doesn't know everything, but feel free to ask questions in the chat too. Ask our best. And we go searching to find answers as well. So this is Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael, versus Molefi Asante, talking about Pan.
Activist Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, and Dr. Molefi Asante are part of this debate on Afrocentricity. This hour-and-a-half event is hosted by the United African Organization at the University of Cincinnati.
Abargani. Kwame Ture was born Stokely Carmichael in Port of Spain, Trinidad in 1941. During the time of the civil rights struggle, Ture was arrested and imprisoned more than 15 times while organizing for voter registration in Alabama and Mississippi. Beginning in 1966, he was known as the foremost exponent of the Black Power movement, which swept the African world. In 1968, Kwame Nkrumah moved to Conakry, Guinea, in West Africa, where he worked and studied with Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, the president of Ghana. Here he became an organizer for the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the AAPRP, founded by Dr. Nkrumah. Ture has traveled and lectured all over the world as an organizer for the AAPRP. He has lectured at most of the major universities in the United States and has dedicated his life to the fight for Pan-Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa under an all-African socialist party. It is truly an honor to introduce to you Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Ture.
Thank you. We ask you to excuse us. Our pain in our right leg is giving us constant pain, and we have to stay off of the leg as much as possible. That's the only reason why we're taking the sitting position. Pan-Africanism, what I'd like to do in the 20-minute period we have is to give you its general outline, its general development, and of course its future path. Some people think that Pan-Africanism is a response to colonialism. While certainly Pan-Africanism responded to colonialism, we must not think that it's colonialism that brought Pan-Africanism into being. Of course, to see this clearly, we should just look at the general evolutionary processes of all societies on a universal basis. All societies have a tendency to go from a smaller social aggregate to a larger social aggregate, from the family to the tribe, to the clan, to the nation, to the continent. This is an evolutionary process. This theory can be seen in living practice if today we were to look at Europe. Europe everywhere speaks of European continental unity. Even though Europe has fought more fratricidal wars than any other continent, or all the continents put together, Europe still speaks of European continental unity. Of course, Africa will unify before Europe, but that's not the point of discussion here this evening. The fact that Europe, with all the fratricidal wars she fought, can speak of continental unity shows this evolutionary process. Africa, like any other society, anywhere in the world, was involved in this same evolutionary process, going from family to tribe, to clan, to nation, to continent. This evolutionary process was interrupted by European imperialism. It came in two forms, slavery and colonialism. First, they took over 300 million, the strongest, out of Africa, and then they divided Africa at the Berlin Conference. So you can see that Africa herself was moving on this evolutionary process. This evolutionary process, which would lead to continental unity, and Africa will still be the first continent unified, was interrupted by European capitalism. Since it was interrupted by European capitalism and evolutionary process, the only way that Africa can unite today is through a revolutionary process aiming at a socialist economy. If capitalism destroyed us, it doesn't make sense to use capitalism to continue with it. We must use the antithesis of capitalism, which of course is socialism. And certainly if an evolutionary process has been interrupted, the only way we can capture the time lost is through a revolutionary process. We state these facts only to let you know that those of us who are revolutionary, Pan-Africanists, is not because we love revolution. It is historically determined, and we have no alternative but to follow history and to use history for the benefit of our people. So this then is the general outlines of Pan-Africanism. So you must not think that Africanism just began. Had Africa been left untrampled by European imperialism, we would have a long time achieved continental unity. Secondly, Pan-Africanism must be seen as a movement, a mass movement. And this mass movement must be properly understood. Africa, of course, because of racism, is belittled everywhere. And many people do not.
This is an interesting point, that people don't think that Africa can unify under one nation, and Kwame Ture here is saying that it's happened before.
Right. Yeah. The interesting thing where he says it's not a response to colonialism. So I know, for instance, with a lot of people, whenever we start getting into our debates with one another, we always talk about our oppressors and everything. It's easy to discuss things out of our anger and kind of hatred or something like that out of for our oppressors and whatnot. And it might be rightfully so, but just like how we got to empower ourselves how to like love for just ourselves, not just in opposition of our oppressors. But I like that he said like Pan-Africanism is not necessarily just a response to colonialism. And how he does talk about how it's like a general evolutionary process of societies. Like it eventually was going to happen anyways. Like it's not like it was never going to happen. Societies were already starting to merge together and whatnot.
Very good point. All right, we're going to keep it rolling.
See Africa's constant, underline the word constant contributions to world civilization. Since the 1940s, Africa has given, even before the 1940s, actually, we can go back to the Honorable Marcus Garvey, Africa has given to world political movements a mass character. Africans revolt in masses, never as a vanguard party. If you look at the independence struggle in Africa, it was nothing less than mass. If you look at the struggle in the Caribbean for independence, it was nothing less than mass. And even the United States of America, the only movement they call a mass movement is our movement. Therefore, this mass character must be properly understood. Pan-Africanism has this mass character. Africans have this mass character in responding. And our responsibility is to bring this mass character together, make it precise so that it can direct its blows at the enemy, hitting him until we knock him down. Therefore, the task of Pan-Africanism is to gather the masses of our people together in the same organization, irrespective of where they find themselves, be it in Europe, be it in the United States, be it in the Caribbean, or be it in Africa. This is the first aspect, then we must understand. Pan-Africanism found its organizational expressions in 1900. Here, a Pan-African conference, here the word conference, was organized by Africans from all over the world. They came together deciding that something must be done for Africa. One of the leading organizers of this conference was a man by the name of Henry Sylvester Williams, born in Trinidad, a man whom you should do some history on, a very, very great man. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois attended the conference, but he was not one of the leaders in 1900. By 1917, 1918, the idea of a necessity for a Pan-African Congress, not conference, Congress, was to be called. But most of the people who did the conference were dead. Henry Sylvester Williams was dead. A lot of them were dead. Du Bois was about the only one who was alive. Du Bois recognized he had a historic responsibility to continue the work of Pan-Africanism, so he called the first Pan-African Congress. Make a clear distinction. The first one in 1900 was a conference. Du Bois, being intelligent, understanding that a conference is limited and a Congress has more elasticity and can go longer, called it a Pan-African Congress. From the 1990s up until 1945, we could say seriously Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois just about single-handedly kept the flame of Pan-Africanism alive. One thing must also be underlined to you. Pan-Africanism was brought into being in its organized form by the Africans outside of Africa. This was done only because of the oppression of Africa. At that time, Africa was under total colonial domination. There could be no political meetings. As a matter of fact, if you had the paper of the Honorable Marcus Garvey, you could go to jail. So the conditions were such that it was difficult for the Africans on the continent to organize. Africans off of the continent, recognizing this, came quickly to fill up that gap. So Pan-Africanism itself was brought to bear by the diaspora. But you must not think that the diaspora brought Pan-Africanism for the diaspora. Not at all. The center of the discussions has always been Africa. This must be properly understood. Some people try to shift it, take it somewhere else, but Africa has always been the focus. Du Bois carried on his congresses up until the 5th Congress in 1945. Because of time, we're just going through them quickly. In 1945, saw the 5th Pan-African Congress. Here, you had Africans born on the continent, in the Caribbean, and Africans, of course, born in Europe and the United States. At this 5th Pan-African Congress, there were 3 co-secretaries, of course, W.E.B. Du Bois, George Padmore of Trinidad, and Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. So you had an African from the Caribbean, one from the United States, and one from the continent, who were co-secretaries of the 5th Pan-African Congress. The 5th Pan-African Congress is crucial for us. A decision was made there. They said that the final confrontation with colonialism is coming. After all, this is 1945, and you must know that there's negative and positives in everything. I remember once as a young man reading Mein Kampf on an airplane, sitting next to a woman. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean what I'm doing? I'm reading Mein Kampf." "Why are you reading it?" I said, "Well, Hitler's a very important man. He had historical effects on the world, you know." She said, "Well, I'm a Jew." I said, "Have you read it?" She said, "No." I said, "Oh, that's bad." I said, "Have you not read Sun Yat-sen?" She said, "No." I said, "He says the first law of war is to know the enemy. If I were a Jew, I would read everything there is to read on Hitler." Of course. Of course.
I want to comment on that really quickly. What you just said right there, Trinidad really showing out. Hell, most definitely. And they got some other names there too, like Eric Williams,
Right.
CLR James. So I thought this would be a good point for us to tell them we got a lecture coming out this upcoming Sunday where we're going to talk about a lot of figures that are prominent in Pan-Africanism and their impact, their influence, and kind of what they did, just to give people like a short rundown. But I think that history that he just gave, you know, it was short, but it was concise, and it kind of gave you some insight into like where Pan-Africanism actually started and what it actually is, you know.
Yeah, it actually gave perspective because, for instance, I feel like sometimes we have a disconnect. Well, not sometimes. We have a disconnect in general with our family on the actual continent. And I know for some people some of my brothers that I actually know that have lived and been on the continent and whatnot, they tell me how like we're just trying to like the conscious development is coming. It's just now really thriving or starting to build even more. Like universities are still being built. I know with the whole election in Uganda with Bobby Wine and them, I know that they were talking about how the population there it's youth. Like a majority of the population is youth. So like a lot of change is about to come, and like like most people say, Africa really is the future. Like y'all, once we start getting more conscious development going on, I feel like there's going to be the objective of Pan-Africanism, like Pan-Africanism. Yeah. My bad. I feel like the objective is going to be easier and easier once we start bridging these gaps, you know, like getting away from like these intellectual gaps, you know.
And you know, I feel like people know also like this is part of our power, like our numbers, but we just disperse. So like just the power of Pan-Africanism to bring all of that power together collectively in an organized manner, I feel like that's understated, because that could really just be a huge political force for us.
Exactly.
Let's get back to it.
So while reading Hitler, she was arguing. I said, well, Hitler had some positive effect anyway. She said, what positive effect did Hitler have? I said, Hitler weakened European imperialism. He weakened the British, he weakened the French, he weakened the Portuguese, he weakened the Belgians, and that's how we got independence. So these are facts of life. These are facts of life. When Hitler got through with Britain, When the Indians said they want independence, Britain could do anything to get out the way and let them have independence. Matter of fact, they got Mahatma Gandhi quick because they didn't want to deal with the armed struggle that the Indians were preparing for British imperialism in India. And by the time India was free, well, it was over. China came up. After China, of course, Africa throughout, et cetera, et cetera. And by 1960, in 15 short years of the declaration of the Fifth Pan-African Congress in 1945, 2/3 of the African continent was independent. You must understand clearly the importance of this. Now, at the Fifth Pan-African Congress, they said the only solution to the final confrontation is mass organization. And I say, if you look at Africans, we have nothing but mass character in our struggle. Of course, this mass character for the moment is spontaneous and must be transformed to something that's planned and permanent. But certainly the mass character is there. If you just look back to the Rodney King situation, those Africans who rebelled en masse. They had no planning. That's how backward they were. They didn't think about it. Just on the spot, they said, okay, it's too much. Let's go, let's get them. And everybody said, okay, let's get them. And we rise up as mass and we get them. And then we sit down for 29 years. Of course. But the mass character is there, and we must understand this mass character. The Fifth Pan-African Congress, most of Africa, of course, was colonized. Kwame Nkrumah came to change all this. By 1958, he threw the British out of Cape Coast and named it Ghana. And Nkrumah declared before the entire world that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it's linked with the entire continent of Africa and its unification and liberty. And Ghana and Nkrumah made Ghana the base for every movement that fought against colonialism. Mugabe, who's now the head of Zimbabwe, where was he trained? In Ghana. Go and ask all of them. And Nkrumah set up freedom schools, teaching how to use arms to go and fight. It was Nkrumah who built the base and pushed Pan-Africanism. He understood that Africa was divided in 1865 at the Berlin Conference, and that we cannot accept divisions imposed upon us by our enemy. Africa is one, we must unify her. This has been the task. Of course, since Nkrumah, the movement picked up. The independence of Guinea came in the same 1958, later that year, and with Stokely Ture and Kwame Nkrumah, the movement really coalesced force. The Pan-African movement, of course, was not going to be left alone. Imperialism would seek to divide it. That's their job. Stokely Ture says, if the enemy is not doing anything against you, that's because you're not doing anything. Of course. Matter of fact, when they're not doing anything against me, I get scared. What am I doing wrong? So their job was to divide, and if you will look, they divided the Pan-African movement in what was called the Casablanca bloc and the Monrovia bloc, the revolutionaries and the reactionaries, to put it in one simple word. Of course, the Casablanca group included the fighting forces in Algeria, the FLN, which the other African states refused to recognize. Of course, Nasser had to be in it. Of course, Nkrumah, of course, Stokely Ture, Tunisia, and of course, Mohammed V in Morocco, who had just waged serious war to get independence away from the French. The other group was called the Moderate Group, and they were all made up of reactionaries and scum of our race who didn't want African unity and raised a million problems and sabotage it and work for imperialism against the interests of their people, and that still continues today. I always say one of the weaknesses of the African Revolution is that we are the only people who allow our enemies to strut with impunity amongst us. It's only because of our weakness. It's only because of our weakness. Only because of our weakness. Of course, another weakness is that, and this one is very painful, that we have to leave our wounded on the battlefields to be picked by the vultures. We cannot even pick them up. We cannot take care of our prisoners, the families of our prisoners who are in prison. I mean, we're just very, very weakly organized, but we are revolutionaries. We don't look for easy tasks, we look for difficult tasks. We leave the easy tasks to those who do not wish to advance. We know man and woman can only advance before difficulties. Therefore, we look always for difficulties. We said they divided Pan-Africanism, and out of that a compromise was made called the Organization of African Unity. Many people think.
So I think that right there, what he just said was powerful. And it kind of revolves around the concept of revolution and how revolution comes about through like problems and conflict to kind of create something better. You got anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, Frederick Douglass has a whole quote about this, talking about struggling. You know, we don't get anything without struggle. Like that whole quote, just we don't look for the easy task. We look for a difficult task. We leave an easy task to those who are not looking to advance. Like people, it seems as though none of it, like the part about this that I think people really need to really move towards with all these, we have so many different organizations, but the whole purpose of Pan-Africanism, for in his eyes and what he's saying here, is mass organization under one organization. And that I feel like that right there in itself is a hard task, just to get everybody together on one page, because we have so many different thoughts on what we need to be doing. And for instance, I know at the back, his afterword in his book Black Power, he talks about how when they started saying Black Power, so many people had so many different ideas of what Black Power was. It kind of threw them off instead of actually being on one accord. So looking for those difficult tasks, like that's something that a revolutionary must understand. Like you have to want the difficulties.
Yeah, most definitely. And like for him to experience that, him being like the originator of the Black Power movement, him to experience that division and then come towards the concept of Pan-Africanism, I think just shows like that's just and also with other leaders with the same aspirations as Kwame Ture have also led to, Pan-Africanism. I think that's important.
Right. That's the crazy thing, because
I really like that quote as well.
Right here,
the independence of Ghana means nothing if it's not connected to the independence of Africa.
Exactly.
Real.
Like the crazy thing to me though is that you would think people would want to just pick up where our leaders left off at. Even Malcolm was
moving.
Sounds out, bro. Oh, my sound's out.
Oh, never mind. It's mine. My bad. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. It was saying, like even everybody loves Malcolm, but forgets when he came back from his pilgrimage, he was out there with Kwame Nkrumah as well. Like he had Pan-Africanist thoughts, like people forget some of our real revolutionaries were actually already moving towards Pan-Africanism, but you get on there once the leaders fall and people kind of sway another way.
You try to make that mass movement, not just like little small exhibits of like mobilization, but mass organization is what they're really afraid of. All right, so let's get back into it.
I think that the Organization of African Unity is Pan-Africanism. It is not. Pan-Africanism cannot be built from the top down, and the Organization of African Unity is an organization of the heads of states in Africa. Pan-Africanism must come from the bottom up, from the masses of the people up. It is here then that we come to see the real aspect of Pan-Africanism. We said that in the Fifth Pan-African Congress, they called for mass organizations, and immediately mass organizations sprang up throughout the length and breadth of the African world. The Conventional People's Party, a mass party, sprang up in Ghana. The Democratic Party of Guinea, a mass party, sprang up in Guinea. Throughout the length and breadth of Africa, you had the TANU, the Tanzanian African National Union, which is now the CCM. My Swahili is not as good as yours. Chimpa, Chimpuraza, Mazuri. That's very good. Oh, my Swahili is bad. Thank you. Exactly. And that's their new party. But all over Africa, mass parties sprung up. If you look at the Caribbean, mass parties sprung up. And if you look at the United States, mass movements sprang up. So the call was heeded for mass confrontation. Of course, the Fifth Pan-African Congress made two definite and precise resolutions, which I want to highlight. Of course, Pan-Africanism from the very beginning was anti-colonial. From the very beginning, it was anti-colonial. It was weak. So when they came, they didn't say to the Queen, we're going to put you out of the country. They said, you must treat the natives right. You must educate them. You must prepare them for self-government. These are things that are weak, but they were anti-colonial in essence. We must not look at the form. And we got stronger, the more this anti-colonialism will express itself. Now, anti-colonialism is nothing but anti-capitalism, because colonialism is nothing but an offshoot, an aspect of capitalism. Therefore, if you're anti-colonial, you must be anti-capitalist, if you're logical in your thinking, of course, and your actions. Some people are not, but we are speaking of logical people here. Yes. If you're anti-capitalist, then you must be socialist. Capitalism cannot unite Africa. Africa has to be united by socialism. Now, there's a lot of confusion here on this question of capitalism and socialism. Just recently, a young man said to me, but socialism died. I said, yeah, you didn't hear about it? I said, I missed the funeral. Of course, he spoke about the betrayals that occurred in the East. You must not let capitalism confuse your thinking. This is a struggle which Pan-Africanism takes on. We struggle against imperialism in the ideological arena because many people think that capitalism just wants to exploit your labor. It wants to confuse your thinking and make you think just like them. And this is where the real fight occurs. So therefore, this struggle of confusing the thinking, I told the man, I said, you're talking nonsense. Socialism cannot disappear. It cannot die. He said, yes, it can. I said, no. He said, how do you say that? I said, well, you are judging socialism by socialists. You don't do that. He said, I've never heard such nonsense. If you don't judge socialism by socialists, what do you judge it by? I say, judge it by its principles. Every system is judged by its principles, never its adherence. So he still saw confusion. He said, you're just talking double talk. I said, okay, do you judge Christianity by Christians?
All right, can you hear me this time?
I get you. That was me last time. My bad.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want it because I don't think people realize how fast KT be talking. And the first time I watched his video, but I've had to watch his stuff multiple times to really be catching every single thing that he says. And he has like good 3 or 4 points right there. We talked about the Organization for African Unity. I mean, he was saying people kind of confuse that with Pan-Africanism, but he was like, that's not, because that was basically top down. Like, and that remains.
So what exactly is that for people who don't know?
The Organization of African Unity.
Yeah.
It was an organization that was basically between the sovereigns in Africa, or not. I guess I shouldn't say sovereigns, but the leaders more so. Like, but it just reminds me of how, well, these were the heads of the states essentially, and it just reminds me how people nowadays we call in our black bourgeois to be our saviors and everything, and try to help us and whatnot. And yes, I agree they should be contributing and whatnot, but every other so year, people talk about Jay-Z and Beyonce, or somebody talks about Oprah and all these other black bourgeois that's super comfortable, but it's like it doesn't work top down. Like, all of this stuff is grassroots. Like, every single positive movement was grassroots. Like, that's something that I think people really miss, and like that's a real proponent of not proponent, but a real key factor of Pan-Africanism, that it's bottom up, not top down. So I was actually talking with a sister yesterday about that, where I was like, I don't really care for the black bourgeois. Like, I don't be watching movies like that. What do they do? Like, my heroes are pretty much dead now. They done transition. So like, I'm watching their lectures all the time. So like, I don't see them as my savior or anything like that, you know? And I like that he says Pan-Africanism is been anti-colonial from the beginning.
Yeah, that was
like,
a big point right there.
Exactly.
And colonialism to capitalism, and the damage that's been done on people's minds through capitalism, I think is powerful. And he says that's where the real battle is.
Exactly.
And, I think that's critical. And we're actually going to be covering some of that too in a book that we're going to kind of present the topics out of, because it's a good read, but it's a little hard to read. But it's called Intellectual Warfare by Jacob Carruthers. So we're going to try to relay a lot of those topics to y'all in a way, that's simple to grasp.
Yeah, it'd be killing me when people want to say they Pan-African, but they're black capitalists. Like, it's like that's the total opposite of how this really actually works. Like,
what I'm saying? Like, if you anti-capitalism, you must be anti-colonialist.
Yeah.
Anti-capitalist, then you must be for socialism. Like, if you think logically.
And he's got another video where he's saying like Africa is the original socialist society. And we all know that when you study it culturally. So it's really coming back to the answers that were already given to you. It's capitalism that's funding your own downfall. My bad. What'd you say, bro?
I was just saying that we just trying to get back to where we were, in some ways.
Exactly. Sankofa.
So we must not be confused here. Socialism doesn't fall because of betrayal. No system does. The person who betrays themselves goes to the mud, but the system, with its eternal principles, keep marching on. If a system fell because of betrayal, Christianity would have been finished with Judas. At least Judas had the dignity to hang himself. Some of these who betray socialism don't have that dignity. Gorbachev still runs around speaking and picking up 30 pieces of silver everywhere. Yeah. So socialism is an economic system, and there can only be two in the world, capitalism or socialism, because every economic system must answer one fundamental question: who will own and control the wealth of the country? Who will own and control the means of production? The question can only be answered two ways. Either a few will own or everyone will own. It's as simple as that. And under capitalism, we say, please summarize that we might have. No, I'm going. I thought I had 20 minutes. It's my time. I thought I had 20 minutes. I was going by the clock. How much time do I have left? I'm sorry, maybe I'm off. That's what I thought I did. I was watching it. Now I'm watching my clock. I'm irresponsible. I'm revolutionary. I go by time. I my clock right here. Matter of fact, I can say it in 2 words: Black Power. And today we've gone to one: Pan-Africanism. Yeah. So there are only 2 economic systems, and it's going to be capitalism or socialism. Capitalism is a backward system. There's no need to discuss it. Certainly anyone who's been made a slave by capitalism ought to be hesitant in trying to support the system. But as a conscious African, I must be against capitalism, and I must, of course, seek to destroy it. So when you speak of Pan-Africanism, you must understand you speak of socialism. And we want to underline there's only one socialism out here, and that's scientific socialism, whose principles are abiding and universal. There's no such thing as African socialism, Chinese socialism, Russian socialism, Arab socialism. There's only one socialism. The confusion arises over ideology. That is that which guides you towards your objective. So we're saying clearly here, Pan-Africanism is not an ideology. It is an objective. It is an achievable. Pan-Africanism is the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. All we want is a unified continent with a socialist system. That's all. But you know, Africa is the richest continent in the world. When she's properly organized, she'll be the most powerful. Yeah, of course. Of course, and me, all I want is power. I'm not like others. I don't want money. I don't want popularity. I just want the power I'm supposed to get. That's all. That's all. Pan-Africanism is moving into its final stages, which calls for mass organization. The All African People's Revolutionary Party, founded by Osajifo, Kwame Nkrumah, has already outlined this in his book, The Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. There are many people here in the audience who are members of our party, the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We have chapters in America, we have chapters in South and Central America, we have chapters in the Caribbean, we have chapters in Europe, and of course we have chapters in Africa. Our job is to unite all these Africans together. We're not worried, we stand squarely on our history. The Honorable Marcus Garvey did this already a long time ago, therefore it's not anything new. And those of us who know our history know that it will spread like wildfire. Pan-Africanism then is revolutionary. It cannot be anything else. Pan-Africanism is the only solution for Africans because, as the Honorable Marcus Garvey never ceased saying, until Africa is free, no African anywhere in the world will ever be free or respected. Thank you. Ready for revolution.
I think that last part right there where he just taught is powerful because I think a lot of people might not realize how Pan-Africanism could really be of benefit to them, being like a Black person in America, mostly. So
I kind of
imperative understanding that this like is a political power that would hold stance wherever we are in the world, you know.
Exactly. I think it's keys when he says he don't want money or popularity. It's power, because when you have that power, what does money matter to that point? If you under a all scientific socialist society, what does money matter at that point? Like most of your living is going to be taken care of. You know you're gonna have food. You know you're gonna have a place to stay. You know you're gonna have health insurance. Like you know you good. So like the only other thing you're going to really need money for is the lavish things in life. And you don't necessarily have to struggle under scientific socialism with Pan-Africanism. You know, I think people, like, we do relate money to power because it can be related to that. But if your whole collective has true power, like you said, Africa is the richest. Organized properly, it's the most powerful. So it's like once you know you got all those resources that everybody wants, and what is money to you?
I just found it also interesting how yesterday I was reading some of Martin Luther King's book, Where Do We Go From Here? And he was writing about how the main goal is to end poverty. And
You're
to
right.
do that, he suggested a guaranteed income, which is kind of it's progressing towards that line of thought.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how all of these leaders progress to this similar line of thought, and in most cases, in almost all cases, they were met with that brutal opposition that led to
Yeah.
their death. You know,
And the crazy thing is, under capitalism, people think that they can be a Jeff Bezos or a Mark Zuckerberg, but there's a reason why they're outliers. I mean, like, there's a reason why they got to that point. Like, they had privilege, but they also had help. Like, when you really look in their stories, it wasn't just solely them. They had some help. So, I mean, again, capitalism is just socialism for the rich.
understanding that like capitalism is going to exploit no matter what.
Exactly. That's why black capitalism is kind of like, you do realize you funding the exploitation of your brothers and sisters, across the seas, like, and that
In this
is
country,
my bag.
I was just saying, even in this country.
Yeah, even here.
Thank you. Is the mic on? Thank you. Can you hear me? Where's the sound, man? It's on? Well, I would like to thank Mr. Ture and next we'll have sure. Next we'll have Ms. LaSonia Hunter, who is a member of our Central Council for the United African Organization. She'll be introducing Mr. Molefi Asante.
Goodbye, Ghana. Dr. Molefi Asante is professor and chair, Department of African American Studies at Temple University, the premier center for the graduate training in African American Studies. Considered by his peers to be one of the most distinguished contemporary scholars, Asante is the author of 38 books. The latest are Classical Africa, African American History, A Journal of Liberation, Malcolm X as Cultural Hero, Love Dance, Poetry and Illustrations, and the African Intellectual Heritage, edited by Asante and Dr. Abua Abari. He has published more scholarly books than any contemporary African author and has recently been recognized as one of the 10 most widely cited African Americans. Asante received his PhD from UCLA at the age of 26 and was appointed a full professor at the age of 30. At the State University of New York at Buffalo, he is the creator of the PhD program in African American Studies and the director of more than 60 PhD dissertations, making him one of the major producers of PhDs in the nation. He has written more than 200 articles for journals and is the founder of the theory Afrocentricity. Indeed, his book, Afrocentricity, the Afrocentric Idea, and Kemet, Afrocentricity and the Knowledge, are the key works in the field. Sought after as a speaker and consultant nationally and internationally, Asante was born in Vastata, Georgia, one of 16 children. He is a poet, dramatist, painter, and gardener. His work on African culture and philosophy has been cited by journals such as the Journal of Black Studies, Imhotep, Journal of Communication, Western Journal of Black Studies, and Afrocentric Scholar. Recently, the Utni magazine called him one of the 100 leading thinkers in America, and Asante has recently was recently recommended in a survey as one of the 25 influential African male leaders of the last 200 years. He appears regularly on shows like Nightline, Night Talk, BET, McNeil and Leary, News Hour, Today Show, and The Tony Brown Show, and Night Watch. He has received honorary degrees for his community and educational work. Asante is the founding editor of the Journal of Black Studies and was the president of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee at UCLA in the 1960s. Recently, he was made a traditional king, Nana Akuru Kita Asante Kurubia I, and Shadihini of Tafu in Ghana. Dr. Asante has been or is presently a consultant for the school district of Detroit, New York, Baltimore, Camden, Cleveland, the Virgin Islands, Trenton, New Orleans, and Gary, Indiana, for writing curricula. An activist scholar, he believes it is not enough to know, one must act to humanize the world. I introduce Dr. Molefi Asante.
That's one hell of a bio right there. I just gotta say that. That man accomplishment list is off the charts. Also, a lot of high education.
Yeah. So you can't say he's not qualified in what he's in. The crazy thing is he became a king in Ghana. like that's the if y'all can actually Google the pictures, he's like dressed up in the robe and everything, got the crown on. It's like that's wild, you know.
I didn't even know that. That's awesome. This is actually the first time I'm really learning about Molefi Asante. Like I've heard his name before, but I didn't really know who he was and what he did. So that's awesome right here. I'm interested to see what he said.
Yeah.
King, most deaf.
Yeah.
Abari Ghani. Assalamu alaikum. What's up? I want to thank the United African Association here at the University of Cincinnati for this opportunity to have a discussion with one of my heroes. I must tell you that those of you who do not know, because some of you are perhaps very young, you are having a very great occasion tonight to be in the presence of someone who has made his mark and is making his mark on our history. Kwame Ture. We don't often recognize sometimes the people among us. And here is a man who has done so much for the African world. And I remember when I was a student and working with SNCC at UCLA, he was at that time one of the individuals that I most respected, and I still respect him quite a lot. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything he says. But quite correctly, however, I don't think that there is much that he said tonight that I take a lot of exception to. I am normally not used to debating people that I agree with so much. I mean, they normally have me pitted with Dinesh D'Souza or Arthur Schlesinger or Mary Lefkowitz or somebody like that. But tonight, I'm really delighted to be able to explain what I think might be some differences in the discussion that we have heard from Kwame Ture. Afrocentricity is the theory that says that African people precedes unity. Unity operates on the basis of common interests and objectives. The African world indeed African people here in the Caribbean, on the continent of Africa. All of us have been.
I just felt like that was a powerful point right there. He said that
Yeah.
consciousness has to precede unity. What do you think about that?
But that's the part right there to me where I feel like where we kind of just sit there in the middle and we like, yo, these two go hand in hand. Like Kwame Ture is known for saying the job of the consciousness is to help the unconscious be aware of their unconscious actions. So with him being a big proponent of consciousness, and Molefi Asante was right there just telling you like you can't have unity until you first have consciousness. And that's to me, they go hand in hand right there. Like they have the same, I guess, root of it, of our progression. In that
I
one,
would say that Pan-Africanism is kind of just like the political part of that consciousness. And
right?
even like the Pan-African, like we're in AAPRP in a work study, but first you have to build your political consciousness before you can really unify. So I think it goes hand in hand. It's not really against each other.
Nah, not at all. But I mean, I feel like he's gonna give us the.
What'd you say?
I was just saying he about to give us the differences though, since he said they disagree. So
terms, psychological terms, political terms, economic terms, philosophical terms, cultural terms, linguistic terms, fashion terms, name terms, whatever. We've been moved off of our terms. We're not operating on our own terms normally. When you are moved off of your terms and you are not operating on your own terms and you do not view yourself as an agent, that is, as an actor, as one capable of acting in any context, then you will never be able to create Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism or any movement must first of all fundamentally be based on the notion that individuals see themselves as subjects, as centered, not as objects on the margins of Europe, not on the fringes of the European experience, not imitating or following after Europe, but are centered in their own African experience as African people and view themselves from that particular perspective. That, of course, means a number of things. That it is the European intervention in the last 500 years that is most responsible for moving us off of our terms. I will never forget reading once what Macaulay said about the Indians in India when he was a colonial administrator in India, that it was the purpose of the British government to make of the Indian people British in opinion, British in desires, British in ideas, British in aspirations, in everything British except in color. And I think that when I consider the situation with African people, both on the continent of Africa and in the diaspora, I have to assume that the same purpose or the same intent or the same mission was meant for African people, consequently to move us off of our own terms. That's why I always say that colonization and enslavement, twins of the capitalist domination and exploitation of African people, have been just as effective with us as with other people. But even more so when you think of the fact that more African people have been destroyed at the hands of this domination. Let me explain something. Slaves are not born. Slaves are made. But how do you make a slave? You make a slave by creating the loss of memory. If you create the loss of memory and you create a historical amnesia, then it becomes possible for individuals to no longer remember. And when they no longer remember to whom they are connected, their own traditions, then they will follow any tradition. But you cannot have, therefore, on the continent of Africa or in the diaspora, any unity that would bring about any Pan-African idea. We have, as Kwame Ture has told us, since 1900, since Sylvester Williams, we've been talking Pan-Africanism. But you know why we have not had an effective Pan-Africanism operating? Because we have not had a philosophical base. Without Afrocentricity, you cannot have Pan-Africanism. You can have a discussion about it. You can have rhetoric about it. You have to have ideas. You must have interests. You must have institutions, mechanisms for carrying out Pan-Africanism. But you cannot have ideas or interests or institutions until you have African people on the same page.
I know he's probably about to keep spitting. He's kind of going in right now, but he's saying a lot of stuff that I just don't want to like gloss over.
Nah, I'm taking notes while we at it, bro. I'm like, I gotta get this down.
Yeah, I'm soaking this in right here. So I really like where he said that that the erasure of memory is the first step in creating a slave. Mm-hmm. And really, the answer's right there. So like the first step in fixing a slave is probably just like a knowledge of self.
Exactly.
That's got to be a large part of the process. And I found that very powerful. But he kept spinning.
The thing is, if anybody on here has read Kwame Ture's Black Power, in his chapter, like the specific chapter, Black Power, in the book, he talks about the need of self-determination. Self-determination is going back to knowing who you are and being able to speak your own narrative and have your mental not necessarily be so colonized. Like I know we always talk about how certain words, like he said, your psychological, your let's see, what did he say? Psychological, your cultural, philosophical, linguistic, all these different terms. Like the one that always gets brought up for me is how cousin did not exist. That word did not exist. Like old folks' homes, those did not exist. Like it's a total different tradition that I feel as though we need to get back to. There actually is a good book out there about how they made the natives basically British. It's like it goes into detail about the types of schools that they indoctrinated them in, and that made me think about just regular school that we were all in, getting indoctrinated all the time. And I'm just now really forgetting the Pledge of Allegiance. Like I can't tell you how that thing goes, and the Star Spangled Banner. Like I can't even tell you how that song goes anymore. So I'm proud of that. Like,
hey, you good, man. I can remember that almost down to the word, the last word. But I think what's important here is just the understanding of colonization of consciousness. Like before they colonize you in other ways, first they got to take your consciousness from you. Mm-hmm. And that's what he's saying. Like we got to get people's consciousness back to where it used to be in Afrocentric, because we are really Africans. Mm-hmm. And then we've just been colonized in America.
Exactly. I think
most people don't even see themselves as Africans. So how are you going to unite? I see his argument. How are you going to unite under Africanism if you don't even see yourself as African?
See, that's that colonizer mentality where you'll feel ashamed to say African. Like when did you stop being African? That's the real question. And I know you tapping into you finished Let the Circle Be Unbroken, right?
I have not finished it, but yeah.
Well,
I'm
how
I'm just fucking with you.
Man, that book is keys because she really connects us on a spiritual level, our music, our religions, and our total way of life in the States and in the Caribbean and Latin America and Brazil, like all these similar things that, when you hear them Afro beats, we vibe to it, like we hear the reggae, we vibe to it, you hear the Caribbean music, like we all have that same spirit connecting us.
Really in
So
our genes and our DNA.
yeah.
Conversation.
Negroes do not talk to Africans. And black people don't want to have anything to do with colored folk. And on the continent of Africa itself, we are suffering today in the fratricidal wars on the continent itself because we do not have a philosophical base. I mean, the Hutu and the Tutsi. This is a good example. The intervention of Europe has created a situation that has not allowed consciousness. We don't have the same mission in mind. And that's why we don't have any African governments. I lived in Zimbabwe, not as long as Kwame has been in Guinea, but I lived there. But I didn't see an African government there. I wonder whether or not we have one in Guinea. I haven't been there, I can't say that. But in the other countries, 27 countries I've been in, I haven't seen any African governments. What I have seen African people in government. I have seen African people running government, but I have not seen an African government because African people do not yet have an Afrocentric philosophy in terms of the masses. Of course, we have Afrocentric clubs in Sierra Leone and Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria, and other places, but I mean the masses. So that what we have in the governmental structure would be individuals who are imposing a European system of government on the masses. So you got black people in government, but they have never truly understood the intellectual ideas, the conceptual ideas, the political ideologies of their own people. You will never have anyone who will march into the royal palace at Kumasi and have a coup d'etat on the Asante Hene, the paramount king. It might happen in Accra with a modern state government, but it will not happen with a traditional government because we have never taken the legitimate ideas and concepts of traditional African society, the things that made those societies legitimate in the eyes of people and employed them in the modern governments. We have had problems over and over again. Take the Empire of Ghana. It lasted 1,500 years, from 300 BC to 1240, when Sundiata, the king of Mali, defeated Sumanguru, the emperor of Ghana. Of 1,500 years. How did they do it? Do we even investigate it? Do we ever even think about it? And let me just say this, that when we talk about Afrocentricity, we are not talking about the philosophy that is anti-anybody. We're talking about a proactive African philosophy, African people as centered, as subjects, as actors. We're not merely to be seen or to be seen at all on the fringes of the European experience. We are ourselves people with ideas, with our own concepts of politics. And as for economics, I think that we have to navigate between the deformations of socialism and capitalism. And I don't see capitalism and socialism as the only alternatives. And this is why, and Kwame said that African socialism wasn't a good idea. Julius Nyerere wrote a whole book called African Socialism. And I think that basically what the president of Tanzania was trying to deal with was this whole question that somehow we should not be pitted between one European idea and another European idea. That Africa itself has contributed enough in terms of how human beings deal, that we don't have to be stuck with the heavy baggage of historic failure that we see both in capitalism and in the worst forms of socialism, bureaucratic authoritarianism, regimented regimes. I mean, the collapse of socialism in those instances, in those examples, should be enough to at least make us wonder how in the world or why in the world would we follow after false gods. It would seem to me that the Afrocentrists would rather say that Pan-Africanism comes about or can come about fundamentally when we first of all have a clear understanding that strategy is better than strength. That not only is strategy better than strength, but once we have a strategy based on our own interpretation of ourselves and history, we will understand that common origin, common objectives, and common conditions are what create unity. I mean, we can talk about the unity of Europe and how Europe is unified, but Europe is unified on the basis of common interests when it's unified. And I believe that the future of Africa is in the hands of those who truly understand that for African people to be free, to be liberated in our own minds, is the first step toward developing a Pan-African unity between African peoples.
Honestly, bro, it's hard for me to disagree with much of what he said.
Yeah. I feel as though the key points to me right there that I really enjoyed is how he was talking about how we kind of debate between two different European philosophies. Like now Kwame Ture does have other lectures where he does show you that Marx didn't found or create socialism or anything like that. He literally looked at Africa and came up with his ideas that he had. However, going back to what Molefi Asante is saying, like what we have seen so far historically has been the worst kinds of socialism, except for maybe Cuba. So that's kind of like, for me, I don't like to even debate Democrat Republican with people because I'm like, y'all debating over the plantation I don't want, right? Y'all, I don't want to talk about that. Like I want to talk about empowering us. Like how can we get back to what he's saying? How can we get back to being centered? You know, like once we are centered, even Kwame Ture talks about closing ranks in Black Power. So like we can't do anything until we close ranks between who is on this side, who's with us. And as he said, Negroes don't talk to Africans. So I guess if I'm using his sentiments, like who are the Negroes, who are the Africans? And we kind of just need to make sure we have people that are centered with us. What's your thoughts, though, bro?
Man, he hit a lot of topics there, honestly. But I'm just pondering over that question a lot. You know, that consciousness, that Afrocentric consciousness, has to liberate before Pan-Africanism.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Because I kind of want to ask
I
everybody.
mean, to me, honestly, it
too.
makes sense. It made sense to me, you know, because if you just a Negro, how are you gonna be African? You see what I'm saying? Like, why would you be Pan-African if you? Not saying I don't want that to be taken in the wrong way, but Negro is kind of has a relation to whiteness, whereas African, you know, doesn't. So that shows that mental liberation in identifying yourself as an African rather than a Negro. So I think he has a very compelling argument. I'll say that.
I agree.
So
it's
I
like
think another question. Go ahead.
I was gonna say even Kwame Ture. So to me, in my opinion, they are very much saying this almost the same things. Like we've already said, one is just political, one is cultural, and like Kwame Ture even says, capitalism will screw with your head. It will confuse you. So if we're all still thinking with Yoruba on our minds, you know, like we're still thinking with the colonizer in our minds and everything, then we're gonna want those colonizer tokens. We're gonna want the tokens that they dangle in front of us and want to debate on those things. But when I'm centered, I feel as though I can achieve the objective of Pan-Africanism a little bit easier because I know we all on the same page, you know. So I'm with you on that.
I really think they go hand in hand. Like, so this is another question I've been thinking of. So, one, are people going to unite under Pan-Africanism or African identity? And what would just like a Pan-Africanism with just like black? You see what I'm saying? I think people are way more quick to unify under just being black than African.
Definitely. But the Hebrew Israelites won't. They won't. Like they don't even want. They don't want to be black. They don't want to be African. They're Moors. They Israelites. Like it's. So I
think it's important to understand how you are African. You know, just people like Black Americans in general, for them to understand. We're not really Americans. Like we were born in America. Our people were born in America, but we were taken from Africa. And we do have, you know, European influence in our lives because unfortunately they did. I mean, unfortunately they did rape a lot of enslaved people, African people. But, you know, also we've intermixed, which is nothing's wrong with that.
I would say the thing is, to me, I feel as though the overall objective, with the overall objective, they go two hand in hand for us to just let it slip by and be divisive on whether what we are. Yeah, let me take that back because what we call ourselves does matter. I will say that. Let me. What's Dex got up in there? What do you? I see you chatting, Dex.
The problem with old boy, I like that's an old caps, is that every African black person will never be on the same page. And yes, that's limiting your potential and your capacity in your mind. I definitely agree with that. And just your objectives, really.
Yeah.
If you're not trying to achieve that, then it will never happen. So I definitely agree with that. Go ahead, bro.
Oh, you can be ideologically or ideologically African and politically African or geographically African. True. That's it for me right there because
break that down.
We do necessarily have the influence of Europeans on us. However, we all know that to be American really just means to be white or to assimilate into whiteness, you know. And the thing is, to me, like to be white, it's not even. We all know this. There's no scientific factor behind race. Right? That's just something that's been made up, right? However, and it's something they made up on top of that. But so it's like you really don't. They don't have to be white. They don't have to choose to be white. They just do. They just do choose to do like the exploitation.
Yeah.
Say that one more time.
Because the way they, set up culture and institution, it benefits them to be white.
Exactly. And it's like when we start assimilating, that's us choosing to be white. Like we know to be American is not to be American is not to be African. You know, like and no matter what form we've taken, whatever form we've manifested within like the diaspora and everything, we've still been on the outside looking at them like, yo, bro, why y'all keep oppressing us like this? Like I know, like in Brazil, again, we have they used to say 80 million of us there. I know it's over 100 million. But like what is their ideology? What's their ideological like? What's it? Where's that at? Because I know when I was watching, shout out to Africans Arise, that channel that I got to be on. I was watching one of their videos, and the guy on there, he was just talking about how people are that one and another show where people were really starting to become accepting of saying like, yo, I'm African. Like a lot of conscious development hasn't fully developed. Dex saying it right there. So those who will be conscious will accept it. Exactly. It's that consciousness. It's that consciousness, and that's what he's already stated. But that's what's really missing amongst us on the continent, the diaspora, and overall. Like he said, they go hand in hand. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess when I'm asking Dex, what do you think? Can you not be culturally African and still be for Pan-Africanism?
That's a good question.
I think it's also
okay. You can read. My bad. You go.
Okay, I think it's also levels. Some Africans are confused to the point where they don't see themselves as Negroes, which is important to understand in terms of our condition in the USA.
That's facts.
You always have to be.
How can you show that without offending somebody? Because it's going to tell them some things that they do in their life that they probably enjoy is really what's keeping them behind.
I think maybe the best way, like showing them through being, something that could benefit them in a different way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because like you said, people will reject those type of things.
Oh, Dex hit it right on the point with ADOS and FBA, man. And if somebody taps on this, please do not come in the comments acting reckless. But we do have some folks that will chop y'all up on the Pan-Africanism, bro. Like we know what the true goal is. Even Marcus Garvey himself was sitting there saying, I'd rather have a continent than an island. Now, it ain't saying he didn't love Jamaica or anything, but he knows where the real power is. So I don't. And we also got a cadre, Ajamu, shout out to his page. We might have to post his on here as well, where he's always giving lectures, and him and his daughter went in on ADOS, trying to explain how Tariq Nasheed and what's that lady's name? The lady who's also in it. Dang. But anyways, so they showed how they're just opportunists. Like they trying to get these monetary reparations and then dip. Like it's like I know Tariq Nasheed is the actual pimp at some point. Like that's who I'm supposed to trust. Like that's who I'm supposed to follow. Like the person who is throwing shade on our brothers and sisters across the sea. Like I can't get with that.
And he don't really got any real foundation beside like behind what he talks about. And I've also seen him like, and I ain't just trying to turn into the Tariq Nasheed bashing thing because I could really care less. I mean,
likewise,
but he really is really divisive. There are people who have immigrated from the continent of Africa, and I've seen them. He just completely not even consider them like his brother or his partner, and life. And
I got that other leader. Her name is Yvette Carnell. And again, if y'all check out Ajamu's page, and I'm gonna try to get it commented on here real quick at some point. But you check out his page; he's got lectures on there. He'll break it down for y'all and actually see like these are opportunists. Like these people do not care about y'all like that. Say that one more time. My bad.
Hit him with the link.
Oh, true.
Yeah,
I can drop it in here. Let's see. He said the next level is severing ties to the US. I feel that. And Dex said you can also be culturally African. Yeah. ideologically African cannot be emphasized enough. Exactly. As we know, like as the book that we about to be discussing, intellectual warfare, we all know this is an intellectual game. What is our physical bodies when our mind is owned by oppressors? Like they have that famous quote by Harriet Tubman, and it's a debate on whether or not it's real or not. But of the fact of like how she would have gotten more if they would have. How that quote go? I'm about to butcher the fuck. Let me know, cuss. I'm about to butcher the mess out that quote.
I let one slip out early. I didn't even realize.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a little more conscious on that, maybe so I can be kid friendly with some folks when I had
100%. He used the tactics of the imperialists to distance Africans in America from Africans in the motherland. We all know the ruling class divides and conquers. Tariq uses that to push his program. It's pseudo.
Yeah, he has no real program. Yeah, like the thing is, like, if anybody wants to hop on something, this is how you really manipulate the people that are unconscious. They only tap into this when it's hot. Like if anybody really wanted to be serious about reparations, you would know what N-Cobra. You would know who N-Cobra is. And I personally, now, like Jalen, don't ask me too much about N-Cobra. Like I don't know
who that is. So,
it's actually an organization has really been working on not Pan-African, but they are Pan-African as well. But at least I know people within the organization are like Dr. Greg Carr, but they've legit been working for years on reparations. And then you're gonna hop on ADOS or FBA when they come out of nowhere talking about reparations. Like that's not how this works. So to me, like if you really want to talk about some and I'm more so of a person who I'm not really focused on the monetary aspects of reparations. Like I believe empowering us, getting back to community building, connecting with each other is our true reparations, because I know our power is really within ourselves. Even here on the States, like we talk about Africa and how like if they had conscious development and then they would be able to just kick the colonizers out and know that they got all the resources and everything, right? But I know here, like if we took ourselves out of every single European entity here and solely worked within ourselves, I feel like that's a tactic that really hasn't necessarily been utilized enough. Because as we know, like we are the culture here. It does not matter what it is.
Do we have the means to do that?
We'd have to.
What do we do about like food production?
Make it ourselves. Like,
yeah,
bro, we kind
of need that infrastructure,
That's true. That's why it's like you need to just start. Somebody just got to start. Like I know we got black farmers. I know we got folks with land. You got the 19 families. They bought those 97 acres here in Freedom, Georgia, and whatnot. They naming it Freedom, Georgia. Like that's a start, and it may be small right now, but when we really truly invest in one another, like it's possible. So, I just feel like we don't invest in our own selves enough. Like we still feel as though we have to be attached to our oppressors. Like, and please forgive me, fam, because I know I don't want to butcher your name, dog. But they said I'm so sorry. But the person said they gotta sever ties with the U.S. Like that. That's a goal right there. Like you can sever it mentally, physically, but just trying to start your own stuff, empower yourselves. Dang, what? My bad. Here it goes. Where this is the claim of Harriet Tubman when she said, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves." So that's that mental aspect right there. Even though, again, that's a debate and it said that it's false, but it's still a powerful quote.
Definitely agree. So it looks like kind of like the rest of this is where they kind of get into that debate. And we've hit the 40-minute mark and we're about an hour and a half into this. I feel like this might be a good part for us to break and come back next week and finish the second half. Okay, May.
Not my May. Oh, Lord. I'm so sorry. Oh, and I hate messing up names too, because I know how important it is to actually know how to say people's names. Please, if it's Mame, please give me a thumbs up, because I don't want to. If you come back, I don't want to screw up your name, and I appreciate that. But also, while we hearing about to close out, again, shout out to AAPRP. If y'all interested in joining, please go to the website. You literally can look up AAPRP International, and it's like Google. You know how to use it. We got We Charge Colonialism. So if you're also interested in that organization, please check them out as well. There's the Black Alliance for Peace, the West to West movement that I know Dex is also in. I'm trying to think of all the different organizations. There's State 55 that's trying to get us included in on the. She said, "Yeah, Mame." Okay, thank you, Mame. Okay, what's up, fam? So so we got State 55 that's trying to get us the diaspora. They're trying to get us included on the All African Passport that's going on. That's actually going to be passed this year. Let's see. You know of any more organizations, bro?
I really just want to talk about how we're in February. We're going to start reading The Destruction of Black Civilization, and we're going to start reading that together. And we want to figure out some way in which we can connect with y'all outside of using this platform. So we're going to start some type of group where we can communicate while we read, but also we're going to do discussions. We're thinking about doing discussions on Clubhouse. So if y'all like this, please like the video, drop a comment, share it to a friend who might, find this interesting. Personally, I would say I've learned a lot in that 40-minute period, and just hearing Molefi Asante's standpoint was interesting. I've heard Kwame Ture talk previously, but that was my first time listening to him, so I appreciate his viewpoint.
Yeah, definitely. I'm about to actually drop the link right now to Jamu's page. So, excuse me, if anybody's actually interested in checking that out to see how him and his daughter break down like that ADOS movement and whatnot, here it is right now. I'm gonna also drop it in the regular comments as well as once we hop off of here, or we can just add it to the description or whatever. But yeah, I hope all y'all enjoyed this. My bad, you wanted to say something?
My bad, my mic had just cut out. I was trying to let you know.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, we kind of, again, we revamping this here just so that we can create a better experience and become more communal, so we can have a conversations with y'all a little bit more. So we plan on doing like lecture Tuesdays in a sense. So if y'all actually like this, let us know, because again,
send us some videos too that y'all might want us to tap into, and it don't necessarily just have to be about Pan-Africanism. You know what I mean? Right. We're really trying to do what Molefi Asante is saying. Is we trying to build that African consciousness as well, and trying to get out of that colonized consciousness. So if y'all got suggestions, definitely send it to us. You can find us on Instagram at UnlockedTBC. Feel free to send us a DM. We love engaging with y'all.
Yeah.
Anything else you can think of?
Man, I wish we got to come up with something to say at the end of these. Like this is where Kenny's supposed to be coming in and have something to say at the end. And but again, bro, if y'all like this, tap in with us. Like, come talk with us. Again, we can send you the link and you can be right here talking with us.
If you want to be a part of like building this club of people, of like-minded people, definitely tap in with me or Zach, and we love to have people involved.
Yeah, please look up the Hood Pharmacist. It's not the Hood; it's just Hood Pharmacist. On Instagram, and the Black Academic. Like on YouTube is the app, like with THE, but on IG.
It's also in the caption for the video.
True.
Definitely. I appreciate everybody for showing up. We right at our hour and a half mark, so I think we did a great job. And, Then we'll be back next Tuesday with the second half where they actually go at each other. I don't know how hard they're gonna go at each other, but they look like they get into it.
Oh no, no. Molefi Asante, he says some slick stuff at one point, and the crowd's like, ooh. But it's respectful though, bro. It's pretty dope.
Yeah.
But yeah, forward ever, backwards never.
Like
African
liberation through education.
Yeah. Oh, that is our saying. I'm tripping.
Right.
That is our saying. Liberation through education.
All right, y'all have a blessed week, and we will be back at y'all on Instagram and also on Sunday night with the introduction to Pan-African leaders in thought and Afrocentrism. So, get y'all then. Peace.
Peace, fam.